All right, so this video will focus on 8.4, and the first thing says tell whether the ratios are equivalent. There's actually like 2 or 3 different ways you could do this. So the first one is you could take 35 divided by 20, and you get 1.75. You could also then take 7 divided by 4, and get 1.75. Therefore, these are equivalent. So that's one way you can do it, just divide them. The second way is to cross multiply. So 35 times 4, that equals 140. And then if I take 7 times 20, that also equals 140. So that's 2 ways. So I don't care which way you choose, but one of those ways you should kind of check to see if they're equivalent. They'll be the same answer. So pause the video, try to solve for these. All right, so let's go through. So the first one is yes. The second one is no, no, yes, no, and yes. And what we're doing today is we actually want to figure out when the dimensions of a solid increase by a factor of k, how does the surface area change and how does the volume change? So we have to know what exactly is going on whenever we have surface area and volume in terms of how many dimensions do we actually have. So let's start with this one here. It says that all the dimensions of a cube are increased by a factor of 5/4. How many times greater is the surface area? Explain. Well, the basic thing we have to know here is, what is surface area? It means area. So I'm doing length times width, right? So you're actually multiplying two different dimensions essentially. So if I have 5/4 times 5/4, you can rewrite this as 5/4 to the second power, which in this case is equal to 25/16. So how many times greater is the surface area? It's 25/16 greater. How many times greater is the volume? Well, volume, instead of being length times width, there's also this depth component, right? Because it's three-dimensional. So I will have this 5/4 times 5/4, and now we'll add one more of these, and I'll put down 5/4. And 5 times 5 times 5, of course, is 125/64. So that one will be 125/64 times greater. Let's try a couple examples so we can actually see how this works. So if I look at this one here, it says which cylinder is similar to cylinder A. So this one here, we're going to look at it for a second, and I'm just going to go through, and I'm going to say, so I have 6/4. 6 is the radius, 4 is the height, and whenever I figure this out, 6 divided by 4 is 1.5, right? And I can look over here and do 5/3, and I can do 7.5/5. And we'll just quickly divide these. Again, I just took the radius divided by the height. So I take 5 divided by 3. I get this 1.6 repeated. And if I do 7.5 divided by 5, I get 1.5. So these are exactly the same in terms of my scale factor here, right? The radius to height ratio is 1.5 for both of these, so therefore they are similar. This next one says the cones are similar, find the missing slant height. Well, here's what we know about this. We can actually set this up as a ratio, and we've learned this before. So I could take 13, which is my height, over my radius in this case. And on the other one, I'm going to do the same thing. I have my height, which is L, over my 7, which is my radius. So I can now cross multiply, right? So if I take 13 times 7, I'm going to get 91. So I'll have 5L equals 91. And I got the 5L by just multiplying these across, right? So I cross multiply, divide by 5 on both sides. And if I take 91 divided by 5, I should get 18.2. And that's what this should be here, slant height. So if I look here, it is 18.2. This one here says the cylinder D has a radius of 7.5 and a height of 4.5. Is this similar to example 1? So if I take 7.5 divided by 4.5, I get this 1.66. If I go back to this question here, that was similar to cylinder B, wasn't it? If I take 5 divided by 3, yeah, so that's the same as that one. And then for this one, it says, are the prisms at right similar? if I look here, if this is, or they are similar, so I have to go through here and I figure out that this is, let's just go through here. So the first thing I know is I have, let's say it's 20 over 8. And all that I'm looking at is this 20 and this 8. So that equals 8 over W. I'm going to cross multiply and I'll have 64 equals 20W. And I'll have W equals, if I take 64 divided by 20, this is going to be 3.2. So W equals 3.2. I'll then do the same thing where I take 20 over 11 equals, and I'll have 8 over whatever corresponds to this one, which is L. So in this one, I'll have 88 equals 20L. I can divide both by 20. If I take 88 divided by 20, I get 4.4. So my L equals 4.4. So we'll go through here and see if that works. And there they are. Basically, this is going to save you a ton of time if you understand what we're going to do here. So I invite you to watch this at first and then rewind and watch it again, because once you figure this out, it makes so much sense and it will save you so much time. So if we're doing the surface area of something, we basically take the corresponding sides. So for instance, the corresponding sides between A and B are going to be A over B. And since it's a surface area issue, I'm going to square both of these things, because surface area, of course, is two-dimensional. And then I'll get the surface area over here for either A or B, and I can cross multiply and solve. And let me show you what I'm talking about here. So if I look at number 3, and so if I have 6 over 10, because that's the corresponding sides, right, equals, and let's look for the surface area that I have. Well, I have it for the 10, so I'll put that in the bottom. I'll put 600 and X up top, right? Now again, we are doing surface area. It says surface area here, so I square both of these things. I'll rewrite it. I have 36 over 100 equals X over 600. Well, I can cross multiply, and when I do that, I'll get one number. I can also look here and see, well, it's going up by 6 each time, right? Times 6. So I would take 36 times 6, and I get 216. But let's do it the other way. Let's take 36 times 600, and then I divide that by 100. I get the same number, 216. So for this one, the answer is going to be the surface area is 216. Let's see if that works. I plug it in, and sure enough, the surface area is 216. Let's try another one. So I'm going to set this up, and I invite you to pause the video, try solving, and then look at it. All right, so hopefully you had a chance to look at this. So if I go through and I just set it up as 8 over 5, or I can do 5 over 8, it really doesn't matter. You just got to line this up properly. So the surface area corresponds to the blue one, so it goes up on top. So I'll put 608 up here. And I don't know the bottom, I'll put down X. Again, it says surface area. So I'm going to go through and square. So this will be 64 over 25 equals 608 over X. And when I cross multiply this, and let's just do 25 times 608, I'll get 15,200 equals 64x. And if I divide by 64 on both sides, I get 237.5. So let's look at that works, the surface area. And we'll do the other one here too. And I'll just get the answer. So 237.5, which is what we said. Let's look at how they got 171. So if I go through here, and I just set it up, and this time let's put 5 over 4. It could be 4 over 5. It really doesn't matter. But again, since this surface area corresponds to the 4, I have to put it on the bottom. Since it's surface area, I'm squaring. So I'll have 25 over 16 equals x over 110. I cross multiply and I have 16x equals 25 times 110. And I have 2,750. I'm going to divide that by 16. and I have 171.9, which is what I get here. So how do you think that changes if I now do volume? Volume, of course, is three-dimensional. So instead of having, like I did before, where I square it, I'm now just going to cube it. So an example, it says here that I have this dimensions of the aquarium are doubled, right? So if I look here, that means that I'm going from 1 over 2, right? I'm doubling it. And then my original volume is 2,000 over x. I'm going to do this thing here where I cube it. So I'm going to have 1 over 2 times 2 is 4 times 2 is 8. And I have 2,000 over x. So I'm going to have 1x equals 16,000. So that means that the new volume, when I double this, should be 16,000. And sure enough, there I have it. Now, another way to think about this, just so you know, is that I basically have this right here. So I had 2,000 before, but again, you're multiplying that by 8, right? I mean, that's really what I'm doing, and that's why I get 6,000 more, or 16,000. Let's try another one, though. So let's look at this one here. I think there's going to be 2 of these. Just set them up, pause the video, give it a try. All right, so this time I'll have 5 over 12. I'm going to show you can do it both ways. You can also have it as 12 over 5. It really doesn't matter. If I do 5 over 12, the 288 corresponds to the 12, so I'll put that in the bottom. But I just want to show you that I can do it both ways. So I'll put 288 on top here. And x and x. Again, all I did is I flipped this around. I then have to cube both of these things, right? So this right here is 125 over, and then 12 to the third power. So 12 times 12 times 12. So I get 1728 equals x over 288. And then this one here would be the same thing, only it would be 1728 over 125 equals 288 over x. See, when I cross multiply, it doesn't really matter. It'll be the same numbers, right? So 1728, let's actually go back to 288 times 125. And then I'm going to divide that by 1728. In this case, I get 20.8333 repeated, which is what this is going to be right here, 20.8. This one here, I'm going to do the exact same thing. So I'm going to put down my corresponding side. So it'll be 3 over 4 equals, and then the volume goes underneath the 3 one, so I'll put down 9 here. Again, I'm cubing it because it's volume. So this would be 27 over 64 equals 9 over x. So I have 27x equals, and then 9 times 64. Let's do that. So I go over here and I do 9 times 64. And I get 576, and then I'm going to divide that by 27. And my answer should be 21.33, which is what I get. So that's really the lesson today. Basically, the big takeaways are you look for corresponding sides. Once you have them, if you're looking for surface area, you are going to square it. If you're looking for volume, you are going to cube it. And then you're going to cross multiply and solve, and it will save you a ton of time.